Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Aaron.
Aaron's right here, everyone. Welcome back for some more SPTV. Happy Tuesday to all you glorious SPs out there. Let's have a quick little chat this afternoon about visa problems coming down the pipeline for Scientology. Several of you guys out there sent me a link to this article last week, and I put it on my list to do a video about this, and it never quite made it to the top of the list. But Mike Rinder did a blog post about this very issue, and I figured perfect excuse to finally get a video done about this. So check this out, guys. This is there's a link to this blog post in the description down below. Mike says, visa problems for Scientology, less human trafficking as a result. So this is, so September 29th. Yeah. So, okay, that was longer ago than I thought, 11 days ago. A green card processing change means the U.S. could lose thousands of faith leaders from abroad. Now, real quick, guys, for those of you who may not already know, when you hear about Scientology's Sea Org members, the guys who sometimes wear the military looking outfits, they signed the billion-year contracts, they work for between like 70 hours a week and 100 hours a week, they get $50 a week at most. A lot of people wonder, how is it that Scientology gets around labor laws or minimum wage laws or anything like this? And the answer is because Scientology's staff members and Sea Org members are legally considered religious volunteers. So when you see this headline here talking about faith leaders from abroad, Scientology Sea Org members that are recruited from low-income areas in Mexico and South America and Russia, those are faith leaders from abroad, believe it or not. All right, so let's take a look at what else it says here. Mike says, this recent article, and we're going to look at that article in just a minute. This recent article appears to spell trouble for Scientology's Sea Org recruitment efforts. For decades, Scientology has exploited the immigration laws to bring foreigners into the country under the guise of them being religious workers. In fact, the vast majority of those so brought in ended up doing menial jobs, housekeepers, gardeners, filers, et cetera, that are not what this sort of visa is for. Now, I got to tell you, that hadn't even occurred to me that, like, okay, I did know that Sea Org members were brought in from overseas all the time on these religious worker visas. It did not occur to me that putting them to work in the hotels, half of the Sea Org members that exist in the United States are just doing cleaning and maintenance and cooking. It didn't occur to me that those aren't actually considered religious jobs and are not the proper use of the R1 visa. That is, I think, very important in this story. Okay, so in fact, okay, Mike says that are not, I'm sorry, they end up doing menial jobs that are not what this sort of visa is for. It has been a tremendously valuable hook to get people from Eastern Europe and Central and South America, offering them a visa to get into the United States. It is a pretty attractive proposition to many in these countries that they will not only be relocated to the U.S., they will also be given job, housing, food, clothing, and medical care. It is why there are so many staff from these areas at the Flag Land Base. For those of you who may not know, the Flag Land Base, or sometimes called the Flag Service Organization, or just called Flag, is the biggest Scientology organization in the world. It's located here in Clearwater, Florida, where I live. You'll hear it sometimes referred to as Scientology's spiritual headquarters. That's technically accurate. Some people think that means that Clearwater, Florida is the headquarters of Scientology, even though that is not accurate. But it is, Flag is the biggest Scientology organization in the world. Like I said, it's located here in Clearwater, Florida. And there are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of these workers from Eastern Europe and Russia and Mexico and South America. And this is the reason, as Mike is explaining. It seems the good old days are over. While not intended to impact Scientology, it is good to see the U.S. government doing something that, even if unintentionally, will reduce the likelihood of continued human trafficking by Scientology. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the actual article Mike is referring to. And before I look at that, I want to give a quick plug to my lawyer friend, Zach. You can find him on YouTube at Your Lawyer Friend Zach. On the weekend of October 20th, Zach is going to be hosting a fundraiser for pregnancy and infant loss awareness. It's a subject very near and dear to the heart of his family. And YouTube requires a channel to have 10,000 subscribers to be able to host a fundraiser. So any of you guys watching now who may not be subscribed to Zach, please consider jumping over there and subscribing to his channel so that he can host that fundraiser in just short of a couple weeks here. Okay, so here is the article that Mike was linking to. A green card processing change means the U.S. could lose thousands of faith leaders from abroad. I'll zoom in on this a little bit more. We're not going to read this whole thing. I just want to find the actual important policy change being discussed. A sudden procedural change in how the federal government processes green cards for foreign-born religious workers, together with historic highs in numbers of illegal border crossers, means that thousands of clergy are losing the ability to remain in this country. Okay, again, we're not going to read everything here. To become permanent U.S. residents, which can eventually lead to citizenship, immigrants apply for green cards, generally through U.S. family members or employers. A limited number of green cards are available annually, set by Congress and separated into categories depending on the closeness of the family relationship or the skills needed in a job. Oh my God, this would be such a fascinating discussion, topic to dig into in a later discussion. In my experience being in the Sea Organization, Sea Org workers, and again, any of you former ESO members out there who have expertise on this subject and want to discuss this with me in a video, please email me at growingupinscientology@gmail.com, because I never worked in the departments that were responsible for the recruitment and the visas and the immigration stuff. But to my recollection, which is only anecdotal because it wasn't my area of expertise, the foreign Sea Org workers that came in on visas that got green cards only got green cards because they married someone. I do not remember anybody getting a green card because the organization somehow got the green card for them. And I'm looking at this article here, and it's saying that these things are separated into categories depending on the closeness of the family relationship or the skills needed in a job. It would make sense that if someone had skills in a specialized area, a highly technical area where human capital was lacking in that area, maybe the U.S. would be more interested or maybe prioritize giving a green card to that person. In the case of Scientology, these people are coming in with no these people are being hired only because they're willing to come. They're not being hired into the Sea Org because they have some special skill. No Sea Org members are hired. Almost no Sea Org members are hired because they have some special skill. They're hired simply because they were able to be convinced to join. And so, the way Miscavige and the Scientology management machine generally puts these people to work is in menial jobs. So the government would not be interested in prioritizing these people for green cards for any reason whatsoever, as far as I can see. Okay, citizens of countries with disproportionately high numbers of migrants are put in a separate, often longer green card queues. Currently, the most backlogged category is for the married Mexican children of U.S. citizens. Only applications filed before March 1998 are being processed. Okay, I clearly don't feel like I understand what's going on there. That changed in March. The State Department announced that for nearly 7 years, it had been placing in the wrong line tens of thousands of applicants for neglected or abused minors from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, and would now start adding those to the general queue with the clergy. Oh, since the mid-2010s, a surging number of youth from these countries have sought humanitarian green cards or asylum after illegally crossing into the United States. This change means that only applications filed before January 2019 are currently being processed. Moving forward, the Central American minors by a few months. What? This change means that only applications filed before January 2019 are currently being processed. Moving forward, the Central American minors by a few months, but giving clergy with expiring visas like Castillo no option but to leave their U.S. congregations behind. They're doing everything they're supposed to be doing, and all of a sudden they're totally steamrolled. Okay, yeah, this is going to apply to a lot of Scientology Sea Org members. Okay, that is likely to dissuade religious organizations from hiring foreign workers precisely when they're most needed because of the growing demand for leaders of immigrant congregations who can speak languages other than English and understand other countries. I'll tell you what, that is not going to dissuade Sea Org recruiters from continuing to recruit from those highly profitable recruitment centers. Sea Org recruiters will do absolutely the bare minimum of what it is they need to do to get that person arrived to the Sea Org. They do not care if it's going to be an immigration problem down the line. It's very much, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, and we don't care if when we get to that bridge we blow it up. So when I was in the Sea Org in LA, we had a ton of Sea Org members who had visa problems like this, and HCO, which is Division 1 of the Scientology organization, they're responsible for all the recruitment, and they end up being the one to handle all the immigration stuff, even though it's not technically their area of expertise. What they would do is when someone was asking for permission to go back to their home country to renew their visa, very often that request would be denied. You'd think that you'd be like, okay, go home, get your status in order so you can come back and all's good. No. The Sea Org is terrified that once they let someone go, they're never going to come back. That's usually what happens. You let someone go, they don't come back. So they'll be like, no, we're not going to let you go home, even though it's to renew your visa. And then once the visa expired, that then became the reason why they could no longer be approved to go home, because then they wouldn't be allowed to come back. So at first, the problem was they didn't think they would come back. Then the problem becomes they won't be allowed to come back, so we're not going to let them leave. So I wonder truly whether this is going to impact future recruiting efforts, or if it's just going to create more Sea Org members who are in the country illegally. Interesting. All right, let's see. Is there anything else relevant in this article? Across all faith traditions, there are few options for those workers to continue their U.S.-based ministry. At a minimum, they would need to go abroad for a year before being eligible for another temporary religious worker visa and repeat that process, pay thousands in fees throughout the decade or for however long their green card application stays pending. One thing that some Sea Org bases have done with some success is sending their worker who has to go and renew their visa, sending them to a Sea Org base outside of the US that's closer to whatever the person's home country is. So if someone's in Europe and let's just say they're in a German citizen and they're working in Clearwater, Florida, and they have to go renew their visa, they might go to Germany to renew their visa, but they might be assigned to the Sea Org base in Copenhagen, Denmark to work for the year until they're allowed to come back into the country, or something like that. That's a little dicey. That's a little dicey because you're giving away free Sea Org members. Sometimes whatever organization is doing that will be in denial about the fact that they don't really have an option. They have to let this person go, and they'll act like they're doing the other org a favor. We're sending you someone, so you've got to send us someone. And the other org really should be like, we don't got to send you shit, bruh. You don't have a choice. You have to get rid of this person. So things would get very political in the Sea orgs between orgs. But yeah, they'll resort to some unusual solution if they have to. Okay, it says a big concern is that leaving is not really viable. The church will replace the pastor or shut down. It's too much instability. That, of course, doesn't apply to the Sea Org. Being in limbo is challenging for the affected religious workers, including, well, okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. You know, that's probably everything that's just relevant to this issue at hand. This is an actual problem for Scientology. It'll be very interesting to see how this gets handled. The Sea Org is no stranger to visa and immigration problems. And I'll tell you, if there was someone in the federal government who was particularly interested about immigration issues with respect to Scientology, they would find a boatload of immigration violations on the Sea Org bases in Los Angeles, in Clearwater. I wonder if that's even part of the reason that Miscavige is trying to open a new Sea Org base in Mexico, is just so that they don't have to deal with so many immigration problems on the U.S. Sea Org basis. I guess you never really know. All right, let's see. Joshua Armenta. This issue is why it's so important for ex-Sea Org members to meet with the consuls for Tampa and Los Angeles and San Francisco for Mexico, and for the Sea Org members to know that they have the right to apply for a T or U visa if they qualify. All right. Thank you, Josh. Gary Mackey. Aaron, thank you for mentioning your lawyer friend Zach's channel. We need to get him above 10,000. Absolutely. Guys, I put up a post on my community tab yesterday saying that Zach needed 2,100 more subscribers. And look, he's already he only needs 700 more. You guys in the SP Nation are absolutely amazing. So hopefully in the next day or two, we can get Zach up to the 10,000 and he'll be on his way. All right, guys, so much more to come later today. Stay tuned for all that. At 6 p.m., I'm going live with Reese for Real Housewives of Scientology. And I think you guys are going to love it. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right